Donnybrook is made possible by the support of the Betsy and Thomas Patterson Foundation and the members of 9PBS.
There's a new police chief for the county, and they're banning books in Wentzville. Some of the topics we'll broach on this edition of Donnybrook. Thanks so much for joining us. First, let's meet the panelists. We welcome back Wendy Wiese of the Jennifer and Wendy Show on KTRS, Mr. Bill McClellan from the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, Ray Hartmann from rawstory.com, KTRS, and the Riverfront Times. And we welcome Mr. Alvin Reid from the St. Louis American. Ray, we've got lots to talk about tonight, but I do want to remind our viewers that we have next up 30 minutes from now, and Dr. Sharonica Hardin-Bartley, the superintendent of University City Schools, will be taking questions from Alvin and Bill. Well, Ray, there's a new police chief, Ken Gregory. An overnight success. He's been with the St. Louis County Police Department for 42 years. He's 70 years old, and he's replacing Mary Barton, of course, the chief who resigned last summer. The one thing that kind of concerns me, even though he's getting positive plaudits from every corner, that the Board of Police Commissioners didn't hold any public input sessions. They didn't establish the criteria. They didn't interview candidates. In fact, everything was done behind closed doors without any public transparency at all. Are you a little concerned about this?
Well, I mean, the Board of Police Commissioners in St. Louis County for a long time just hasn't regarded itself as a public body. I don't know what else to say about that. I think Kenneth Gregory is a good choice from everything I've heard. Massive upgrade. It's interesting that they, regardless of what you think about the process, they named him interim chief last July. And if they weren't going to have a process, I feel like they kind of spent a long time over a 3-foot putt. Okay, I mean, it was a pretty easy choice. It was a pretty logical choice. But why wait? If you're going to have a process, it's one thing, but to name the guy interim and not have a process, and then it takes 6 months later, so, oh, yeah, he's our chief. They might as well just name him chief last July, as far as I'm concerned.
That might be a county, Ray. That could be like from where Mary Barton resigned, I guess, was technically after he was named the interim chief, and it was after the new year. I thought about that, too, but I thought that, you know, that might just be like one of those things where it costs us, if we name him full-time chief now, it may be as simple as, you know, their benefits may have changed. I'm sure he's at the highest level. But, you know, along those same lines, I'm interested in what he would going to get paid. I mean, you know, will he make as much or more than the previous? You know, will he make less? I think those are things I would like to know.
Well, I think it was just, you know, peace in our time sort of thing, you know, that originally they were going to search for a transformational leader, and they've had such bad luck. I mean, Tim Fitch was so personable and great with the press and hard to replace, and poor John Belmar came in, and first thing he had was Ferguson, and everything just went downhill for him, and he wasn't good with the press. And then they thought, well, Mary Barton, and all of a sudden there were lawsuits, and Mary Barton, that didn't work out either. And I think that they originally were going to look for somebody new, but then all of a sudden they thought, well, this interim guy, nobody's complaining. It's so nice, and it's just the easy way to go, and often the easy way is the right way.
Agreed, agreed. And we need some stability. God knows the county needs some good news. So, I mean, in light of, you know, one of those that we keep thinking about is the Wildhaber Award. So let's just let everything settle.
I understand that, but are we forgetting? Don't remember when Troy Doyle was suing, I think he's still suing the county, he pointed out through some documents that Sam Page says, I control the Board of Police Commissioners. They do what I tell them to do. And then the other allegations were that Centene calls the shots. So is all that drama gone now?
But along with Bill here, I think if you went through St. Louis County, you know, Police Department and said, like, okay, young officers, veteran officers, those that work the streets, those who work in the office, conservative police officers, the black police union, the white police union, everybody in St. Louis County Police Department, they asked, you know, not down to every individual, but just basically came away with, hey, does anybody have any problem with this gentleman? And everybody said no. And to me, that's the best job resume that you could have. If to be a police chief, not at all jobs, but to
Charlie,
be a police chief.
Charlie, excuse me, you raised an interesting point, which is which doesn't happen every day, it's that the legal court. It's not just Troy Doyle's lawsuit, which is pending, but there are other discrimination cases in the county. But in particular, with regard to Doyle's, which is really on point because it's about the chief, none of us are lawyers, but I can't imagine it's a great legal strategy if you're defending yourself in a lawsuit and you're saying, well, we followed everything by the book. If the book doesn't exist, you know, it's possible that this move, the way they did it, where like none of us is bothered by it, but it could come back to bite them in a lawsuit like that because it doesn't really appear that they have a process,
Very well.
which exposes them, I would think, to the possibility of being a little bit arbitrary in a case like Troy Doyle's.
To be continued, as they say.
Yeah, we'll see.
Wendy Wiese, want to ask you, as we go to Wentzville in the public schools there, school officials voted this week 4-3 to ban a book. That doesn't happen every day. This case is the late Toni Morrison's The Bluest Eye. And now it was never part of the curriculum as far as I know, but it was available in the library for some AP English students who wanted access to it. I know a lot of people are very upset with this, and I don't like banning books. But in 2022, we're not exactly Walton's Mountain. If there's not a book at your school, you can easily get it from Amazon for, actually, I looked this one up, it's $7 delivered.
Yeah.
So is it really that big a deal?
I think it's symbolic. I just think that it's symbolic that in the forum of ideas, which is something that we need to be encouraging our children to study controversial books. I mean, it seems silly because she wrote this. This was her first novel. She won a Nobel Prize for literature. She is compared to Faulkner and Mark Twain and others. So to have Hitler banned books, Hitler burned books. You know, this is not who we are, and it is incredibly naive for any parent today to think that their child isn't exposed to so much worse on social media on an hourly basis. So I think this was a real misstep, and I think it sends the wrong message to the kids, and it's makes me sad when I think about it.
Excuse me, and I think it's symbolic and a big deal, and the reason it's certainly, we shouldn't have our folks here being accused of independent thought. This is part of a national, you know, talking point. It's a national, I wouldn't call it a movement, but it's a political set of talking points, and it's happening around the country, Texas, Florida, wherever, where they're on this book banning rage, and it is a big deal because it's not a question of whether, as you point out, people can get access. They don't care about whether these kids get access to this, you know, famous author. They're trying to make a political statement, just like it is on the masks and all the other stuff. And it's a really bad, it's really an abuse. And I wish people on the other side would start asking for other kinds of books, the opposite side. I just think it's wrong.
Well, you know, I mean, I agree with you, Ray, and Wendy, that it's wrong. But on the other hand, more kids are going to read the book now than would have before. I mean, the fact that it's on a library shelf, not even a required reading, kids aren't going in the library, I don't think, looking for books. But all of a sudden, if their parents don't want them to read it, they'll read it, and the other parents who are against banning books will suggest that their kids read that book, and all of a sudden it'll be the most read book in the school district.
I stand corrected.
I think the scary part is who complained about the book in the first place, okay? And why did they complain about the book? Because I think it's far beyond there's curse words in it, okay? I think it's subject matter. I think it's the author. I think it's the race of the author. I think also Is Huckleberry Finn on that shelf in there? Okay, you know, how about we take that down? Mark Twain had some pretty, you know, foul things to say about people who weren't white sometimes. But I'm sure that one's standing proud. I could probably go check it out right now.
Well, you know,
they'd
Alvin,
probably shoot me if I walked into the
no,
studio.
good point. But he has been banned at schools.
I'm just talking about
I think Bill's
Winston.
right.
Yeah.
The best thing to do for an author is ban them.
Is ban 'em.
I wish they would ban only in St. Louis, my book, so I could sell a few of them.
Talk about a controversy.
And I will also say this, to Ray's point, this did happen 2 years ago this month. There was a woman from St. Louis who wrote about the immigration experience of Latinos crossing the Mexican border into the United States.
Yes.
And all the liberals banned that one. And you know what happened? She was like on the top 10 of the New York Times bestseller list for the next 20 weeks. It was the best favor they ever could have done for the lady.
I'd stand corrected with regard to Bill, but as far, and I think that whether you call it cancel culture, censorship, whatever, on the left is just as bad as on the right.
is.
That's not
Ask
not the
Joe
point.
Rogan.
But in either case, whether it's folks on the left or folks on the right, it's sending. You could say it's fine for the author, and you're absolutely right.
Or her
but
state.
it isn't fine for the message to send to the kids. And to your point, Alvin, I don't think anybody can play. I think it was I'm not sure this is organic. It may have been organic. I think it may have just
Probably
been
not.
somebody called up and said, this is our talking
let's move on.
point.
Next topic, Bill McClellan. Dylan Hernandez of the Los Angeles Times, a sports writer, was writing about why Los Angeles fans aren't watching Rams games. And in the middle of the column, he had kind of a throwaway cheap shot to St. Louis, calling us a dump of a town. Well, a lot of people in St. Louis were very offended by that. Were you offended?
No. As a matter of fact, I thought Dylan Hernandez has probably been watching this show. I mean, the way we're often down on the city and what it's doing. And, you know, as a columnist, he's thrilled that people in St. Louis are upset. And, you know, the Post, Ben Frederickson, has, you know, responded, and I wouldn't be surprised if Dylan doesn't respond. I mean, it's all kind of fun, and I'm sure that this Dylan, who I'm not familiar with and didn't read his column, you know, has probably never been here and really has nothing against us. So no, I wasn't offended.
It's what columnists are paid to do. It's exactly what columnists are paid to do. The little part of me that still, you know, seethes when I think about Stan Kroenke and I see him in the owner's box during the playoff season, that they're trying to make it look like we were a lukewarm, a town of lukewarm fans. Just isn't true. I mean, that part of it still rubs me the wrong way, but I think it always will.
Well, remember when we were trying to get the Rams and former Senator Tom Eagleton described us as a raucous Des Moines. You know, I mean, come on.
It's kind of fun.
Cities have always gone berserk on each other in a way, and it's been kind of friendly. You know, Chicago versus New York versus Boston, everybody versus Philadelphia. Okay, I just don't think, you know, the columnists are devoting a lot of time and effort to that. I'm not saying that, you know, Ben has the inferiority complex, but this is one where, like, okay, she's gone. She left you. You know, she got married again. She's going to host the Super Bowl.
See, I thought his column was very measured. I thought it was pretty measured.
I like his work a lot.
Yeah.
I like Ben Fred a lot.
But whenever something comes out of L.A., no matter what it is, even especially if there's some negativity towards St. Louis, it's like he feels as though he has to respond, and at some point it's like, you don't have to respond.
I thought it was, you know, I thought the column was, I think it's like Bill says, it's all, to me, if you take this for a second with seriousness, not 1 second, not one piece of it seriously, who cares? This is absolutely just absurd. But I think I am sure there were people in 1995 in Los Angeles who were pretty bitter at St. Louis because we actually came in with $250 million and lured their team, which they actually considered their team, to St. Louis. In fact, they even accused us of stealing it. And history has shown we didn't steal that team. We borrowed it. We came in with $250 million. We borrowed their team for 20 years. We returned it to them about like we found it, and we tripled our money. So I don't think we need to to respond any more than that.
Real quick thought. We won the divorce settlement. Now this is like, you know, kind of like, I'm not going to sit around, you know, going off on this spouse.
They got the kids.
Right.
That's what breaks
With the kids. Oh,
yeah,
that's a good one, Wendy. That's a winner. I like that.
You just won the internet. And by the way, Tashara was right to say we got 790 million reasons not to care about it.
Well, let's get to that then, Ray, and then we'll talk about Roy Blunt getting a big award, because this week, Joe Vaccaro, member of the Board of Aldermen, Ray, and in the city of St. Louis, and Tim Fitch, who's a member of the St. Louis County Council, both expressed concerns and published reports that they have no idea where that $790 million is, how it's being spent. No one's talking about it. We know that 35% or so is supposed to go to the lawyers, which leaves $511 million for the Sports Authority and then the county and the city. But given all the pressing needs in St. Louis, aren't you a little surprised that we're not having committee hearings and public input sessions and people are discussing how should we spend this largesse?
Am I surprised? In 35 years, I've got 3 predictions right, but this one's going to be right, which is grab your popcorn for this. We are totally in uncharted waters here. I mean, there is no, you talk about having no playbook for this. I mean, we have this disjointed, you know, governance system. And I mean, I'm surprised all 90 municipalities aren't jumping up saying we should be part of this. I mean, I have no idea what's going to happen, but I think the two you mentioned are perfectly right to kind of raise a question about, are we going to have a transparency? I mean, and
are we going to talk about it?
I think it's going to take,
spend it?
My guess is it's going to take a long time, and if it was done, well, I'm just saying, you asked me what I think is going to happen. I think it's going to take longer than it should. And the simple thing to do, even though there is no template, would be to agree on transparency as the first thing they're going to do and try to put it together. And you know that's not going to happen. It's not going to happen.
Now, my prediction is that it won't end up like sharks, you know, going off after raw meat. I'm still leaning on that optimistic side that everybody's working together to try to come up with a common solution. Now that way, city, county, stadium authority, they'll be fine if they come up with their own, this is what we're going to do with it. Then everybody, instead of attacking one of them, you have to attack them all. And I think they're actually probably coming up with some kind of,
I appreciate your optimism and your positivity, but I cannot imagine that this is going to go smoothly and everybody's going to want and make good arguments for why they deserve a little more than everybody else. And it's going to be
like
awful.
Here's what's happening right now that's not being reported. There are moneyed interests, developers or others, who knows, whatever industry, they are already meeting with members of the government, and they're talking about this, just kind of like, and I'm not saying that he jumped the gun, but Bob Clark earlier last year said we're going to spend that money on a new expansion for the convention center, whatever the case is. You know there are people who are getting the ear of politicians right now, and they're talking about how the only people not involved are the general public.
That's exactly why we haven't heard about it.
Now,
and by the time the county council gets a hold of it, I mean, we know what that's looked like the last couple of years.
I could see this, though. One of the compromises. All right, Stadium Authority, you got yours. St. Louis County, you got yours. We're going to ask one thing of you. Would you please, you two, give an extra $5 million toward security of downtown St. Louis, be it private security, be it additional police forces, be it whatever we need to do. Would you be willing to do that? And I think they would be willing to do that. So that means that the city is now, what, up 10, up 15 million on the others, but they could agree to that, okay? And I think if enough of those deals are in there, then basically you split the money 3 ways, but you figured out ways to help where it really needed to be helped. These are just pipe dreams. I know.
You are definitely pipe dreams. To get everybody to agree on what's important.
But we all agree that there's too much crime in downtown St. Louis.
We agree. I'm not sure that all of the other...
There are lobbyists and lawyers working the hallways of government right now as we speak.
It's a little bit dated, what you just said. First of all, the lawyers, I mean, I'm sure they'll do some nice things. You know, they'll do some nice things. One of the things they could have done, which would be nice, is not have this thing hot-wired, so they got 35% of a deal that they would have never gotten with a big corporate client. But they got it.
They got it.
Good for them. They were the heroes, no question about it. And I'm sure they're nice guys. They'll do some good stuff.
Well, let's hope they have a big Christmas party, Ray.
Yeah.
I mean, the Blitz Law Firm always does.
Yeah, well, it might be. It might be a really nice. They could have a really nice Christmas party.
Santa was good this
and it'll be
year.
interesting to see how the others in their firms do it. But my point is this: that we have to realize that the lobbyists, the colony of consultants, that all these people, it's a little dated to say they're doing it now. They've been on this since about 15 minutes after this was announced. This is nothing that they just pick up for now. They have been, and in defense of our public officials, they have a lot of people after them.
Well, speaking of money, and we're going to get to Alvin's. Alvin got a shout out by Janet Y. Jackson in today's Post-Dispatch. We're not going to forget. Dylan Hernandez should learn from Janet Y. Jackson. But, Bill, I want to ask you, speaking of money, AT&T has decided to sue the city of St. Louis over the payroll tax. It's 0.5% on all the employees you have in your workplace. And the rules of the city said if you work in the city or live in the city, you pay that. But if you don't, you don't pay it. Well, AT&T was charged by the city for the earnings tax, even though its employees were out in the county or in Illinois. You're not going to begrudge them the money that they deserve, are you?
Yes, I am. I'm disappointed in AT&T, and I'm an AT&T customer. I mean, and I'm maybe I'll switch to Sprint or somebody else. But, the city needs the money. I don't think AT&T shareholders do. And I know the city is getting, a ton of money from the Rams and a ton of money from the government on this. But, the city's already driving to the casino in a new car. I mean, the city's going to spend this money foolishly, and we know it. And it just bothers me that AT&T is going to nickel and dime the city. I think it's wrong.
You were disappointed? I'm sorry. You were disappointed in AT&T? Why? Because you found out they weren't the warm and fuzzy Teletubby we thought they were?
Because I don't think they need to do this,
Of course they don't need to do it, but it's AT&T. I mean, they haven't done...
It was the law, and Kansas City is already issuing that refund.
Let me say, I'll tell you what, maybe Mr. Reid here could get AT&T to donate the money that they're absconding with from the city of St. Louis for no reason to some good cause. Oh, whatever. They don't need...
Exactly. I'm also an AT&T customer.
Whatever.
And just, I'm not Joe Conglomerate, but, I just give AT&T their money. I mean, I'm sorry. I don't think they're out of line asking for this money. Now, to settle it, once again, maybe optimistic, you tell AT&T, we'll pay you, but we're going to pay you,
in pennies.
$5,000 a year forever.
Okay.
I'll tell you what, let's make sure we get tax breaks to
Alvin Reid, Janet Y. Jackson cited your column in her column, she cited your work because you took a look at the controversy surrounding Senator Roy Blunt getting the Henry J. Givens Award this year from the MLK Commission from the state of Missouri. There were protests there. You pointed out some interesting facts about that. Tell our viewers, and then your opinion here.
All right, first, the commission was responding to the St. Louis American, just not me. I got in touch with them when I learned that Roy Blunt was going to get this award. And I just said, there's people that aren't really happy with this decision. They sent me a statement, which was in there. And part of the main thing was it said, that Dr. Givens had requested that Roy Blunt received this award. Well, as we know, Dr. Givens passed away, and then his wife passed away about a month later. I'm sorry, but in light of his record on the voting rights and the John Lewis Act, that I just wouldn't have given it to him. And if I were on the commission, I know it's bipartisan, you've got people from all over the state. If I, as a person, I was so with him not getting this award, and it's not a personal thing, that I just wouldn't have been at the event. I could not have sat there through that on Martin Luther King weekend and watched him get that recognition. I just couldn't do it.
Respectfully to you and Janet Y. Jackson of the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. We all know what Dr. Givens meant to this community. He seemed to be recognizing Senator Blunt's efforts for the education system in the state of Missouri. I think that this was one of those instances where we can't let the perfect be the enemy of the good, And I think that he earned the right to say who should have an award that is given in his name. I think he probably had some history with Senator Blunt, and clearly felt, and you're obviously entitled to your opinion.
Right, right. And I am crossing that line. I mean, I know. I don't, it's like, I'm not saying
I get it.
I don't believe Dr. Givens actually said this or wanted this, but with Dr. Givens not being with us anymore, I would have taken a hardline stance on this.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, apparently Senator Blunt announced when he was first running for U.S. Senate at Harris Stowe, which I didn't know, but I went back and I read the obituary last summer of Dr. Givens, and apparently they were close.
No, exactly. And then he announced on Fox News that the voting rights bill was one of the worst things that would happen to America ever. You know, so, I mean, he just yeah.
Okay. Nah. Well, that concludes this portion of the broadcast, and just around the corner, we are going to check in with the Superintendent of Schools for University City. But first, let's find out what people had to say about last week's program. Thank you, Sarah Fensky, for your comments supporting historic preservation, especially in such a great neighborhood like Lafayette Square. It was encouraging to hear Ray and Charlie's endorsement of Sarah's views. That from Bill Morrison of Lafayette Square. EF wrote, so worth noting that Missouri is expanding Medicare. Ray, though, is right that Governor Parson has no single action he is taking regarding COVID, which is a complete failure of leadership. Thanks for that tweet. And we heard from Kyrock 31, the East Terminal is great. Overall, the airport is functional. Airport reconfiguration should be way down on priority lists for funding for the region. Thanks for that tweet. You can share your thoughts by writing Donnybrook, care of 9 PBS, St. Louis, Missouri 63108. Don't forget those emails. We love them, Donnybrook@9pbs.org, as well as those tweets at #DonnybrookSTL, and follow us on your favorite podcast source. Apple, Spotify, Google Play, or TuneIn. That's it for this program. We thank you very much for joining us, but don't touch that dial because Sharonica Hardin-Bartley, the superintendent of University City Schools, will be talking to Alvin and Bill and taking their questions. That's next on Next Up. Have a great evening.
Donnybrook is made possible by the support of the Betsy and Thomas Patterson Foundation and the members of 9 PBS.